Hey guys, welcome back to another video. My Cosori dual blaze air fryer stopped working a while back, and in this video I'll be going over how I fixed it. So here's the problem. Basically, the basket sensor stopped working and the air fryer just shows 5 dashes instead of temperature and time when you turn it on. Even when the basket is pushed all the way in, it doesn't recognize it. And when I press the play button to start cooking, it does nothing. I also tried starting the cook from the app and that also didn't work. It's just the basket is not in all the way. Okay, let's take a look at how to take apart this air fryer. The first thing you have to do is to take a prying tool. I used a plastic prying tool to go around the edge of the top half of the air fryer. If that doesn't work, you can try a butter knife. So yeah, after a little bit of work, I did get it off, and here's what the inside looks like. Those score holes are where the clips are hooking onto. So this next step is optional, but I highly recommend it. I'm gonna squeeze the top of that T shape on that display cable plug and pull that plug out. So squeeze the T and pull upwards gently, carefully, and it should come out. Again, you don't need to do this, but I just wanted to have more space. I'm putting the top aside for now. Here's the back side of the top. Those pegs are where it's hooked onto. Here's the screws and the model number if you need it. And that's what it looks like. Let's take apart the sensor. Here's the left screw of the sensor. And here's the right screw of the sensor. Make sure when you're doing this that the device is unplugged and it's been sitting unplugged for a while, because we don't want to touch any of the capacitors and shock yourself. After unscrewing both screws, you can pull the sensor housing upwards to get it out. Here's a close-up of the sensor. At this point, I did some tests to make sure the sensor was now broken. I took out my multimeter, put it in continuity mode, put the multimeter test leads on either legs of the sensor, and then held down the button on the sensor. If there is continuity, then you know the sensor isn't broken. You should also hear a clicking sound from the sensor if it's not broken. Mine made a clicking sound and there was continuity. So at this point I knew that the sensor wasn't the problem, so I took a closer look at how the sensor gets pressed and see if the little plastic piece that presses the sensor had any issues. So you can see the little spring and this plastic piece that's moving right now. That presses down on the sensor and it lets it know that the basket is in all the way. Here's what it looks like from all angles. I just wanted to make sure that that plastic piece wasn't broken or didn't have any issues. And here's how the mechanism works. So when the basket pushes this plunger-like piece out of the way, it moves upwards and it presses on the sensor button. But you can see there's like a little bit too much play and on top of the plunger piece. and that's what was causing the issue. Here's a closer look. There's too much space there. So after trying out a couple different things, here's my final solution. I designed a plastic piece that can fill the gap between the sensor and the plunger, and I 3D printed it to fit exactly in that little space there. You don't really need a 3D printer. You can just use a piece of wood or plastic to fill in that gap, and it should work. I did try to use some heat shrink tube and some tape to make the plunger thicker, but it would just slide off while it was being used. But yeah, it's working now. I put some Kapton tape around the plastic piece that I printed to keep it in place and also keep some of the heat away from the plastic piece. Just FYI, if you're having trouble getting the sensor off to replace it, you can stick a screwdriver in the hole in the back of that housing to push the sensor upwards. Okay, so let's put everything back now. We need to put the plunger and the spring back in first. You can see I put a piece of paper behind the hole where it needs to go into. Hopefully you guys can see that. When you put the plunger back, make sure that the angled side faces forward of the air fryer so that the basket can push it up. So I'm just using a little tweezer to put everything back in place, and then using a screwdriver to make sure that it's seated properly. Make sure that the plungers, the side with the hole on the plunger, the back side, is facing the right screw post. So like what you're seeing right there. Next, I'm gonna slide the spring down on top of the plunger using a screwdriver. Mine had a magnetic tip, so I had a little bit of trouble putting it on there. Okay, I'm just checking that it's seated properly, and it seems to be working. Perfect. So we need to put the sensor housing back in place next. I have the screws on the housing itself, and I'm just going to slide it down the front of the air fryer and screw it in. Make sure this is the orientation that you put the sensor back. Okay, now I'm just screwing everything back into place. Next, I'm going to test that the sensor is now working. I'm going to plug the display cable back in, and here's what it looks like. I'm going to plug the power back in. Make sure not to touch the circuit board anymore, touch the internals at all, because you don't want to get shocked. So the air fryer is back on, and then I'm going to push the basket in all the way to see if my time and temperature shows up. Okay, there we go. When I push the basket in, it's showing the time and temperature, and I can start cooking. There you go, it's fixed. Now unplug the power and let the capacitors discharge for a few minutes before you work on it again. One last thing before we close everything up. That black cylindrical thing is the piezo buster, which makes the sound in the air fryer. I've seen some people rip them apart, rip them out of air fryers. You don't want to do that. What you can do is put a little piece of plastic tape on top of that hole you see right there at the top, and yeah, electric tape, and that should quieten it. And I put everything back, and that's pretty much it. My air fryer has been working for a few weeks now, and it's been working great. Thanks for watching.